Hey, yo, what it div, y'all? Let's get right into it. Thought I was done with Sanctum videos, and I remember I have one more critical topic to talk about, which is just League Start Sanctum. Done it before. It's another popping topic because of the fact that Ventura also did it earlier this league. If you saw his 24-hour stream where he went to almost 200 div in a day, you definitely know that the strategy is effective. And if you're curious when I did it back in Tota as a part of my project Apothecary, just seeing how fast I could build up apothecaries through different methods. One of those I chose is Sanctum. I've been running Sanctum for a while. In fact, actually, you're probably here because you've seen some of my other Sanctum videos already. And so I figured with all the other information I've given out about Sanctum, I should talk about how to actually league start Sanctum, just in case you want to, get into it early. There's a couple aspects that are super important to it, and I mean, it's going to set you up fantastically at the start of a league, for sure. So before we get into it, hey, look, if you find this video useful, helpful, etc., please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Subscribe with the notification bell on if you want to know when we post. But the most important thing really is just getting the video out there. I want other people to see this. The whole goal here is just for people to see and learn about the things that they are curious about. And so thank you so much for your effort in helping me get that done. Now, the first thing we need to talk about when starting Sanctum is your build. Which I've talked a lot about builds already, so I'm not going to go too in depth on this. There's an entire video actually where I talk about some of the Sanctum runners I'm aware of, which I will note now, if you don't hear the build that you're interested in there's a chance that I might have named it at the end of that video when talking about other builds that I didn't have the time in the video to talk about in detail, but also feel free to just, ask in the comments about them. But here, I'm going to give you 3 quick suggestions that I think are very good for league starting Sanctum: Bama, Penance Brand, Hex Blast. I think those are my top 3 for starting of Sanctum. And Bama is a little bit of a weird one compared to the other 2 in terms of just the one that I haven't played on this channel yet, but also the one that I have not really covered too much. I think Bama is an absolute star-studded victor in terms of being the best noob-friendly option for Sanctum. I think all 3 of the skills I named have good quality of life options to them, but Bama has such low investment and the ability to flicker between content types very easily, as Bama is really hard to get to a point where you're turning your character into a dysfunctional character, just due to the fact that there's limited things that scale minions, which means that they are very efficient with the things that they do scale with, and it leaves you a lot of room to do other things like keep the character functional should you want to map. Should you want to go heist, should you want to do whatever it may be, you still have a technically functional character for quite longer than otherwise you would. Hex Blast Mines is definitely going to be my second recommendation, just because I think the skill is incredible, it's fun, it's comfy, etc. I will give you the one heads up that Sandstorm Visage is pretty expensive, and without experience, practice, and planning, it is difficult to scale that character into I-81 plus Sanctums until you have Sandstorm Visage, or again, a plan and the skill to do so, meaning talking about things like pseudo-link helmets, or being aware of just how to snipe your hands onto an early Dialis, which luckily for you, we're talking about Sanctum, so you should actually have the money for an early Dialis anyways. And number 3 is Penance Brand of Dissipation, my most recent build on the channel and the one that I used to play in BPL, right, which is a fantastic example of a league starting type environment where I did rush into Sanctum very early. And that skill is fantastic for it. It loses a lot of the comfort that you may see, and otherwise due to the lack of Swift Brand and overall extreme cast speed scaling and remarkable jewels. So you do have to get adjusted to what the low gear playstyle of a Penance Brander feels like. But I think all 3 of these are fantastic options. And just as a one last piece, I recommend Bama Necro in particular due to how strong poison scaling is early on. And then also it can be scaled into elemental with higher gear and aura stacking. For Hex Blast, if you are specializing in Sanctum, Occultist. If you want the character to be overall functional, Trickster. Enough said there. And when we're talking about Penance Brand, I will say that Inquisitor is overall the strongest Ascendancy. You can also play it on Assassin, Occultist, and Elementalist. I would recommend Inquisitor though, as it is the strongest. And if you want an even stronger start, play Hierophant first. Just like I did in my video, play Hierophant, and the only difference is that you're going to respec into Inquisitor, right? You're just going to go redo lab 1, unspec, respec, and boom, now you're an Inquisitor, and your character will have a much higher ceiling on their damage. Okay, that's the builds. That's like, of course, a number of other builds work here. Those are just my recommendations. The bigger thing is having a build that works, that you are comfortable on, because Sanctum is hard. Like, not hard in that it's undoable, not hard in that it's impossible to like outnumber check, whatever. It's that starting Sanctum is a difficult thing, and you need to be comfortable with both the fact that the skill that you're choosing can do it and your own abilities in the Sanctum. So the other thing that's important here is practicing Sanctum before trying to league start it, so you don't bum yourself out over, menial losses from breaking a tome or two here or there, right? It'll happen. Do not lose your head over it. Now, we need to talk about the currency sources in Sanctum again, which I'm not going to go into too much detail on terms of like exactly what they are, but rather re-emphasizing a part of their value. If you want to learn more about this and other parts of this, I recommend checking out the comprehensive Sanctum guide that I've already posted on the channel, as that will give you a lot more detail about what goes on in Sanctum, as well as how to scale out some of the information I'm giving here. The big thing about currency sources in here is that it's skewed a little differently than it is in the current state of trade, for example. Currently in trade, and the number one reason you hear about Sanctum is because of the ridiculous amount of divines it outputs, right? You're thinking like, oh yeah, I was watching so maybe you're watching me on stream or like in my videos, you see me constantly pulling down divines at the end of my Sanctums. And that's insane and all. It's still going to happen on League Start, but it's not as overwhelming of a percentage of your money as you might think it is. Because early League, when divines are only say 60, 80, even 100 chaos itself gets a lot more valuable, and the value of say GCPs, glass blowers, vol orbs is a lot higher. So now you see these GCPs in a bundle of 12 and you're like, ooh, that's almost 25 chaos, which that's almost a quarter of a divine on floor 1. Yeah, you see what I mean? That, or you see glass blowers in 79 plus, I believe it is. I believe that's the threshold. Will drop 30 at a time at the end of the Sanctum. 30 at a time. Early this league, they were going for over 2 chaos per. That's over 60 chaos in one click. You see what I'm getting at? You picking up what I'm putting down? The general idea is that you have so much value in bubblegum currency in addition to the divines and chaos that you're getting. And because you're a Sanctum runner only, you aren't touching shit else besides Sanctum once you're in there. You don't need these currencies, right? Like outside of, okay, I need to glass blower my flask at some point, but right now I don't. Therefore, somebody take 60 chaos off of glass blowers off of me so I can go buy some upgrades, so I can buy some more tomes. That's the strength of the Sanctum start. You forego the need for so many other resources in exchange for just needing raw chaos to keep you going. That's the power. Now, the other major currency source is relics, as there isn't really much of a relic economy early in the league due to the fact that they don't exist. You can get a lot of money out of generating relics. And this comes in the form of unique or magic relics, right? Someone has to, get the early Blood of Innocence drops and the Power and the Promise and Chains of Castigation. Maybe you get lucky and get an original Sin drop early league, right? Like there are all these places for insane drops early in the league. So that's part 1. And now we're going to start to talk about strategies where I'll lean into part 2, which is when you're generating these uniques, you can run them yourself. A fantastic strategy that I know multiple people who made an unbelievable amount of money in this league on was that they were just running Chains of Castigation. Imagine your standard Sanctum run with a value of let's say 65 to 80 chaos profit per run. Normally speaking, because you're running Chains of Castigation, so you can't really target your rewards as easily. But so you run it, you get about 60, 70 chaos worth of profit value from the run, who knows? And then you drop Sandstorm Visage at the end, which at the end of early in the league was a 5.5 div flip. You do that 4 or 5 times in an hour, you are generating 20 to 25 div an hour in profit. In profit, you guys. 25 div an hour in profit. What would you do if you were just making 25 div an hour profit right now? The answer is buy a Mage Blood, right? Like that's insane type of money, and that's a large part of the strategy. I know people who do this with Original Sin, right? Original Sin at the start of the league is a fantastic investment. Buy an original scripture, run it, look at if you want to even sell the Sin. That's a higher investment early league strategy. Let's bring it back down a step, right? Because Chains of Castigation even is a little bit on the higher end, as your character needs to be kind of strong to run even a proper 75 to 78 range Chains of Castigation due to the difficulty of the run through randomness. Now, if we come down a step though, I mentioned relics didn't exist. This includes magic relics. You could just be a relic farmer. If you watched my comprehensive guide, again, just going to plug it one more time, usually you'll check that out. At the end of it, I talked about a strategy where you convert coins to relics, and I mentioned it as an early trade strategy, but it was mostly for my SSF people, because I feel like it's a very important part of the SSF playstyle. We used it in BPL to get our relics going for quant relics, and you can do that in trade to get quant relics to sell to the populace, merchant relics, reveal relics, right? As well as buying them from merchants that you see. There's a lot of ways to like eke out extra value in the Sanctum in this variety. So, recapping, money and relics, that's where your money comes from. And so strategy one, of course, is just running Sanctum normally. Every run of Sanctum gives you a unique relic and a magic relic at the end and a bunch of currency from all the stuff you clicked on. Very easy profit there. Number two is actually hard farming the unique relics and even running the ones that are profitable when you're ready, because that's where the real escalation of profit starts to kick in, right? Imagine you're still dropping all the regular currency you drop and whatnot, but now there's just 4 div on top of that at the end of every run. We like that. We like that a lot even. And so those are the things that I would be recommending keeping your eye on. I also had a shout out for one about tainted currency in my comments. I'll have that comment on the screen to shout out to them. I can't remember the name, but I remember seeing it. And the idea is similar to the relic thing. Tainted currency early in the league is very valuable, especially if you hit tainted fusings, right? And so similar idea, just leveraging the power of Sanctum to fund underserviced parts of the economy at the time. Now, we've talked about the build. We've talked about where the money comes from, and I've given you some ways to use that information. There's one last important part that you've probably been thinking in your head the whole time. Hey, is he ever going to cover this part? Because let's be real for a second. I talked about a lot of things regarding how to actually make money in the Sanctum, but this is league start. And do you have a character ready yet? That's what this last section is about. How do you actually get your character prepared ahead of time? And now this is a step I butchered in VPL on purpose because I had to do some things differently than how I do it in trade due to needing to help the team with specific things. Number one is that when you are leveling your character, I highly recommend skipping Katava. Like the Act 10 Katava, skip him. You aren't going to be mapping anyways, right? Like you don't need to map to get into Sanctum at all. Like not even almost a little bit. So unless you really just want to map at the start for some reason, all you're doing is adding a rest penalty for you to have to deal with early on in Sanctum. And you actually need to deal with that because early Sanctum, you can't ignore your defenses like that quite yet until you actually have the damage to trivialize the level of Sanctum that you are running. And therefore, you're going to need to be able to like live a hit or two every so often when it does happen. Having your 30 resistances is pretty nice for that, especially for the random chaos damage that happens in there sometimes, or like the floor 2 mini boss, right? Like just keep yourself covered against that. So now that we've talked about skipping Katava, it's like, okay, well, how do I get into the Sanctum? 2 ways. 1, you get given a free Sanctum as a part of the campaign. If you are in Act 10, Divinia in like on the docks gives you a quest that sends you to the ossuary to go pick up the Mortonomicon. Doing that quest line gets you your first Sanctum. You can run that Sanctum whenever you want, right? That could be your first Sanctum. And it might just bankroll you immediately. Maybe your character's not strong enough for that yet, though. How did we get there? Blood Aqueducts, Heist, Chamber of Innocence even. Farming out, Chaos Recipe to buy gear with. Farming out stuff to actually buy gear with. If you have a league like this league, even just farming gold to go hit the black market with. So you get some better gear on a couple slots that you need. You could farm a lab even, right? You're playing a character that's going to have specialized single target. Love specialized single target, lab. Fast character with single target, yep. Go farm out some transfig gems, sell off important ones. Maybe early league, you hit like Ice Nova or Froth Bolts. You hit that a couple times. Now you've got enough money to get your character geeked out. Go buy yourself about 10 tomes, get to work, right? Or you go to Heist, you click on a couple boxes, you get like 80, 85 chaos, go buy some tomes, buy some gear, get to work, right? There's a number of ways to make currency in the trade economy without ever actually having to enter maps. And therefore we can maintain our 30 res and then go into Sanctum. At which point, the second part of this discussion is getting your XP up, because a part of this is definitely you're going to be thinking, well, I need XP in order to put on the stuff that I'm using. Now, at a certain point, you can't really XP and say like even like Chamber of Innocence. Once you get into the 70s, Chamber of Innocence starts to fall off. I believe it's specifically at 75, 76 that you hit the proper fall off range for Chamber of Innocence. 76. I'm thinking about the math as I'm talking about this. And so you can't really XP as efficiently, but that's okay. Sanctum is safe and gives you a lot of XP on room completion. Like every room gives you a burst of XP. And so you can use that burst of XP to get you leveled up pretty safely, pretty quickly, as well as shout out to the first crest. Yet again, there is an experience variant of it. If you really want to lean in and index into your XP generation in the Sanctum to quickly get yourself up to say 90. Because you need to be comfortable with the fact that your character, you know, it's going to be a little bit before you get to 95, 96, 97. And you're going to be playing down 2 skill points from Katava until you say, you know what, my character's strong enough. It doesn't matter. I have money. Kill Katava, give me my 2 skill points, right? Of note, by the way, you can still run Uber Lab without having run maps. All you have to do is buy an offering. Okay, like 2, 3 chaos there. Boom, you get your Uber Lab. So your character's all set to go, even without touching maps. And now you're printing money. And I think that covers all of the base bone strategy points here, right? I have infinite detail. I could go into all of these things, but I feel like these are the things that you really need to know. And the rest of this makes a lot more sense if you just put this into practice. Again, you know, I recommend doing this, say like as like a 0 to hero project in the trade league itself, or maybe in an upcoming private league. If you're looking at any of the event leagues that are happening, like I'll be playing in Pain on Friday, but I won't actually be doing Sanctum in it. But it's just like, you know, if you were in Pain League, for example, you could do that. Or maybe, you know, if you recently did, what is it? Not the sleepy event. What was it? There was one that just started. Like if you're doing that, maybe you use some of this practice in there, for example. Whatever it may be, you can start to put these tools to use. Remember, get a good build. Remember where your money comes from. Remember that bubblegum currency is very valuable. And be on the lookout for when your character is strong enough to engage in the unique flips that rapidly accelerate your growth in terms of money value when the boss drops are still worth a ton. And remember that you can just run standard strategies revolving around character power, as well as various coin conversion ideas or general like relic farming ideas that exist again in the comprehensive guide if you want to learn more. And remember to gear yourself appropriately ahead of time and don't skimp out on getting your gear upgrades. You don't need the money to run maps with or anything. So get gear, get your gear, right? That covers everything. Again, if you need more questions answered, drop them in the comments. If you found this video particularly helpful, like, maybe even share it with other people who think would be interested in this information. Subscribe to the channel if you want to, you know, support me, and just with notifications on so you can see more about when we post here on the channel. And thank you guys for watching. Also, heads up, I do have a Twitch and a Discord in the description if you want to connect with me outside of here. Twitch, I stream in the evenings sometimes, working on the consistency. I will be streaming over the course of Pain League. I also have my birthday stream coming up on Thursday if you want to tune in for that. Right. And so check that stuff out. Discord, come hang out. I'm active in there. I do see people posting and like I do chat and answer questions and all that good stuff, etc., etc. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope this helps. See you guys in the next one. Peace.